Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
All right, welcome to the show, everybody. This is episode 52 of the GreggHoush Show. You may have noticed that I am not, in fact, GreggHoush.
What?
I know.
How'd you get
sorry.
in here?
This is an evening of people who aren't supposed to be here. In fact, I am Anna, your traditional alt-Gregg. Here with me tonight is Mac, who is Lieutenant Gregg.
What's up?
We have with us a very special guest, Canadian Gregg.
Hello?
Who we'll be referring to as Tony because we only have enough room in our heads for one Canadian, so you must all be named Tony.
I can handle that.
And over in the corner, we have somebody who's not Gregg at all.
Hi, folks. I'm not Gregg, but you can call me Liam.
You may recognize Liam's voice. He has recorded stuff for the show before. This is our first time with him in the studio. I'm very excited. No pressure. Wait, no, all of the pressure.
Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome. So, we've had an interesting week.
Even by recent standards.
Yeah. You know, there's always the joke about Trump years, and it keeps being true. I'm pretty
More and more true every week.
I'm pretty sure
Or
I'm like
year?
87 now.
Getting too old for this.
Rode hard and put away wet.
Oh, come on.
We already had
It's
that
a horse riding
conversation.
expression. Everybody always thinks it's dirty. It's just
It's because it's dirty.
It's not. It just means you rode your horse hard, put it away without
You're
cleaning
not
up.
helping your case.
Methinks the Canadian doth protest too much.
So this week we had Trump's attorneys getting arrested and raided.
Well, they didn't. I guess technically they didn't actually get arrested yet. We just had the raid that's going to eventually lead to the arrest.
I know. I'm just looking at this title here, Trump's MAGA making attorneys get arrested, and
Fantastic.
warms my little heart.
Well, originally that title was because there was going to be a bit on John Dowd, the former attorney of Trump's that's now gone, but it wasn't really enough to talk about how he may, in fact, also get arrested. So we probably should have gone with MAGA with the my attorney got arrested. But, you know, I'm hopeful about the promise of that title in the future. So I feel confident that we'll be seeing some attorneys getting arrested.
Maybe a recurring theme,
It might
a segment.
just.
So I'm sure you've all heard some of this in the news so far. The FBI agents raided the offices of Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. And what's really great about this is it was a no-knock warrant, which means they didn't have time to shred all the evidence.
It's fantastic.
I mean, just
Outstanding.
there's so much about this whole story that's just amazing.
Yeah.
Like it is not easy to get for law enforcement to get any consent from the courts to go after an attorney.
Yeah.
Attorney-client privilege alone makes that a pretty high bar for them to have to get past. And then the fact that like if they do go after an attorney, the standard practice is that they don't start by going straight to no-knock warrant. Normally they subpoena them to get the documents. And so they had to actually go in and convince a judge, not just that there was criminal activity, not just that the criminal activity was directly related to his work as an attorney and therefore attorney-client privilege didn't apply, but that they had evidence that he would either conceal or destroy evidence if they tried to subpoena him.
So what you're saying, this is going to be a heavily analyzed case study in the future.
Oh, it's already, you could just like find like a dozen quotes from like career lawyers, FBI agents, stuff like that, where they're all like, yeah, you know, in my 20 years of working in this field, I've seen a handful of times where a lawyer got raided like this. They always go to prison.
Now here's the second follow-up to that. Who's going to direct the movie?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
Oliver Stone. My money's on him.
I mean, Oliver Stone's
No.
definitely going to go for it. I don't know if he's the one who gets the deal, though.
I mean, honestly, I really think that this movie should probably just be directed by Mike Judge.
I'd take that.
I
would
mean,
take that.
I would definitely watch the Tarantino version.
If
I feel like
Scorsese's
that would
still
be
alive, by then.
cathartic.
I feel like that version's going to make like so much less sense than this already makes, though.
I feel like a Trailer
Scorsese's
Park
good
Boys
with mob
reference.
films.
Sorry.
True.
Yeah. But like directed by the guys that do Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah,
think that'd be
I
great.
can see it.
Trump's going to get his grade 10 this year. It's going to be fine.
I'm so proud of you, Tony. You made it a whole 5 minutes before apologizing.
Oh, for heaven's
Anyway,
sake.
there are a lot of interesting details on this, but it more or less comes down to the office got raided. We'll find out later what all the juicy bits are. And this is
But he's going to prison.
this is an amazing precedent to be setting.
Oh, and it's
I have
only,
been grinning all week long.
it's only tangentially related to the raid itself, but there's just this fun thing because it dates back almost exactly 1 year now. Because in early April of last year, the RNC put out a press release announcing how proud they were to be adding 3 new deputy finance chairmen to the RNC. And of the 3 that they added, one of them was, in fact, Michael Cohen. Another one was Elliot Broidy, who's actually a convicted felon who pled guilty to bribery charges in 2009, less than a decade before he was added to the RNC Finance Committee.
I have
And
this
then-
problem with the phrase convicted felon, though.
Yes, but he also pled guilty to bribery charges.
No,
Maybe
no.
they think he's a felon with convictions.
No, that's not the problem I
That's
have
an
with it.
Excellent.
The
split
problem I
there.
have with it is we're all used to dealing with regular
Sure.
Gregg.
Who's
and-
also a convicted felon.
who's a
absolutely.
convicted felon, as the Scientologists and neo-Nazis love to yell at him.
Yes, but the difference here is that what he was convicted of. Gregg, of course, went to prison over computer crimes, not necessarily related to any of the things that people might be bringing up his criminal past in connection to. Whereas this guy literally went to jail for bribery and then ended up on the Republican National Committee's Finance Committee.
It's fantastic. You know, they really believe in rehabilitation.
And just to make the
No
capstone,
recidivism there.
Nope.
just the capstone on that announcement. At the time that they put out that press release, the finance chairman of the Republican National Committee was now disgraced and resigned, Steve Wynn.
Oh.
So yeah, that's a winning group of people right there.
Literally 3 out of the 5 people mentioned by name in the press release have something that makes no one want to be associated
Well,
with them
yeah.
at this point.
Although
And the other 2 have that they, were part of the RNC.
Right. I feel obliged to point out though that even the goody two shoes in politics. I'm thinking about how up in Canada, the Liberal Party, one of our best fundraisers, turned up in the Panama Papers.
Oh yeah.
It's really the money in politics in the end is actually the problem.
Of course. And I mean, it's very funny to talk about the Panama Papers in the US because, of course, it kind of blew over and didn't get a whole lot of attention here because American names didn't generally show up in them very much because, well, the US already has all of the tax dodges that they need to take, that they would normally go to Panama to take advantage of.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really very relevant to the American situation because, we just were already doing all that shit.
Yeah. And it's so hard to get a change to these finance laws. And it's so hard to make the change permanent. Like, so when the boss was still running things in Canada, aka Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, and he was a multi-term prime minister, and he was approaching old age when he retired. So he decided he was going to try to bring through 2 passion projects: 1, decrim of marijuana; 2, totally overhauling campaign finance laws. So what we did was a dollar figure was attached to every vote. Every vote that a party got, they got $1.5 from the government out of the tax money for that. And then otherwise they lowered the donation limit to I think about $1,500 a year, and you could allocate it around a little bit or go over, but it made it so that everybody was a bit more even keeled when it came to where the donations could go. This is where we need to see things move.
Yeah, I mean, of course, a big part of the problem, especially in the U.S., I'm sure also in Canada, although I'm less familiar with the campaign finance situation there, is, of course, that the U.S. allows all kinds of crazy things that aren't legally considered a political expenditure, even though they're blatantly a political expenditure.
That's right, yeah. And of course, our campaign finance laws lasted 1 term.
Right.
Because then we had Mr. Harper come in and undo it because all of his conservative buddies had more money. Yeah.
So why hasn't your pretty boy fixed it?
Well, he's too busy fixing his hair.
Of course.
That makes sense.
I hate to say it like that because
Liam,
actually
you're one
like
to
him,
talk. You got
but-
pretty hair too.
Why, thank you, Anna.
Justin, if you're listening, man, you gotta turn down the sepia filters and like just give us some reality for a little while, buddy. Like we love you, but
Look, reality's scary right now.
yeah, but it's. I mean, I don't know. Did you guys see this India trip that Trudeau did?
I did.
Like, is it just me or is it?
What happened?
So
He had an outfit picked for every day that was a cultural, like literally like cultural appropriation of Indian culture. Going out there wearing the different things. He had pictures taken of himself wearing a groom's outfit, and his wife was in the bride's outfit. Stuff like that's
really likes playing dress up.
yeah, and he treated it like a personal vacation, and it totally destroyed his lead. Totally. We are now dealing with a wet piece of cardboard having a lead over him. His name is Andrew Scheer, the current leader of the Conservative Party. It's a big problem, and it boils back to this thing of that even in liberal politics, we're afraid to look at just the real deal. We need some sort of sheen and fancy hair and
So how long does he have to turn it around?
When are
really,
the
as a
elections?
political strategist, the only way he will win is if they continue to be behind until the election, and then when the writ gets dropped for the election, if they are behind, then they will be forced to take risks. They will be forced to not play it safe, and they will actually come up with good policy ideas, and that could regain them the lead. But we have a problem in politics in general where when you get the lead, you become risk averse.
And when are the elections?
Totally random. It's you technically have 5 years of a mandate. However, anyone that has ever gone over 4.5 years without declaring the election automatically loses, because then you look weak for waiting too long. The average is about 4 years, but the prime minister, if they have a majority in the House, can choose when the election happens.
I hope all the viewers can, or the listeners can just like hear my eyes glazing over. What the hell is this nonsense?
Yeah, we have this.
This is what happens when you drink milk out of a bag.
Listen, there's a lot of anti-American crap that comes out of a lot of places in the world, but I will give your people wonderful credit for a constitution that can be read and makes sense. The Canadian Constitution, technically, we live under a dictatorship where anyone can be appointed to cabinet, and our whole government runs on convention, which is just basically a fancy way of saying, well, this is just the way we've always done things.
You know, right now I could really go for some "this is how we've always done things" in Washington.
Well, the thing is, we had that kind of in place, and then it turns out that if you didn't actually have that like written down somewhere and like actual enforcement mechanisms, it doesn't mean anything because people just eventually decide to stop pretending that it meant something.
Well, not everybody, but somebody like Trump, who tweeted that it was a total witch hunt. A total witch hunt, you guys, and attorney-client privilege is dead when his lawyer, who
What
was...
a drama queen.
He really is. It's all about the ratings with that man.
The
Anyway,
retweets, the
he
likes,
is-
the comments.
I like how many times he's screamed that it's a witch hunt, too.
I like that he follows up, you know, after all this time saying it's a witch hunt, there's nothing to it, there was no collusion, there was no crime, all these things. Then he was like, well, I've agreed with the historically cooperative, disciplined approach that we've engaged in with Robert Mueller. Yeah, because it's not like you tried to fire him multiple times, only to be told that you actually couldn't do that.
Yeah, we know at this point he tried to fire Mueller at least twice.
We've been told it's more than that, but we only know the details on 2 of them.
The first time, I think it was the counsel, Dan McCabe, he threatened to
Don
resign.
McGahn.
McGahn.
Yeah, the White House counsel.
Don McGahn threatened to resign.
Yes, and the second time, it seems that Trump may have backed down because his lawyers might have lied to him to get him to back down. Because he was very upset when there were news reports saying that Deutsche Bank had been subpoenaed for financial records and was looking to fire Mueller then. And then apparently his lawyers convinced him that those news reports were wrong, that there were no such subpoenas, and they got him to calm the hell down. Which I mean, I'm just going to throw this out there. I trust those news reports of those subpoenas substantially more than I trust anyone associated with the White House.
It's troubling, though, that a president of the United States that you can't reason with him logically, that you have to actually lie to the guy, do
You have
something,
to treat him like a toddler.
have to be unethical in order to get him to do the thing you want.
Well,
That
you don't
really-
have to. I mean, you can just kind of you can just kind of like lay things out there so that he's encouraged to say something stupid and false, because he will. I mean, just every single time
Isn't
anyone
that
gives
what
him.
Mueller's counting on?
Yeah, pretty much seems to be.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, we're talking about the guy that just a couple days ago tweeted out. I'm just going to quote from these two tweets because this is just fucking amazing.
Let's hear
So
it.
much fake news about what is going on in the White House. Very calm and calculated, with a big focus on open and fair trade with China, the coming North Korea meeting, and of course, the vicious gas attack in Syria. Feels great to have Bolton and Larry K on board. I, in parentheses we, are doing things that nobody thought possible despite the never-ending and corrupt Russia investigation, which takes tremendous time and focus. No collusion or obstruction, other than I fight back, so now they do the unthinkable and raid a lawyer's office for information. Bad. That's right. The President of the United States tweeted out, no collusion or obstruction other than I fight back. He literally just said there's no collusion or obstruction except for this particular obstruction that I do.
When I retaliate against the people.
And the sad part is this isn't even the first time someone named Trump has tweeted out evidence of his own criminal wrongdoing.
Is this the part where we talk about how in the Canadian government we're now revisiting the whole thing about what do we do if the Americans invade?
Yeah, I think this is about the time
This
where we
is the
discuss
time.
that.
This is the time?
This is the
yeah,
time.
because that's
I
actually
mean,
happening.
really, you have a lot of opportunities in this show for that.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, my friends that work in politics, their amount of national security briefings weekly have tripled in many cases. And plans like that are actually being seriously redrawn for the first time in 100 years, as far as I've heard, because there is a real tangible fear back home up north of what do we do if a truly great nation collapses right next door to us.
I remember you were saying in another conversation we had that the standard policy is that Canada does not accept refugees from the United States.
Correct.
Is that a thing people are talking about? What would the situation be where we change that?
So it would depend on, if you want to go back to something that has precedent, we're really talking about the American Civil War, which of course took place 3 or 4 years before Canada was actually formed, though the discussions to form it have been going on for a couple of decades at that point. And it again kind of just comes back to this fear of interfering or being perceived to be interfering in American politics. Perfect example is the grandson, or he was Alexander Keith III, I believe, he was named after a brewmaster from Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he committed one of the largest terrorist acts on American soil before Oklahoma 9/11. He blew up a pier in like Lake Michigan or something like that. And he was a Confederate sympathizer. Incidents like that would run chills down the spine of Canadian leadership because those are the types of things that could provoke an invasion. And so I hate to break it to all of you that we won't be accepting any refugees because we'll be terrified of what will happen after. We'll accept the people that you won't take from other countries.
Well, I guess that's something.
Yeah. So any of you that want to move to Canada, start working on it now.
Oh boy.
Boy, that got dark real quick, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Honestly, it's
Tony,
scary
keep
times.
it light.
It's scary when people who are, traditionally fairly, not necessarily conservative, but, laid back and, taking things seriously and acting like grown-ups are now talking about, well, what happens if the unthinkable happens? And, we've got a situation in Washington where there's people walking around all the time like, how did this happen? How do we not? We've got all kinds of crazy nonsense. In addition to the special counsel constantly being, possibly on the chopping block, You know, we've got people like Paul Ryan now not running for re-election. We've got Republicans just running away. We've got all kinds of people who are fleeing from national security positions. You know, it's
2 or 3 in this.
3 this week.
Yes.
Well, okay, 2 of them were technically national security.
One of them was
One
fired.
of them was
wasn't there?
actually there was the spokesman for the National Security Council, Michael Anton. There's Homeland Security Advisor Tom Bossert. There's Deputy National Security Advisor Ricky Waddell and Deputy National Security Advisor for Strategy Nadia Sadlow. Those are all national security officials that announced this week that they're leaving for various reasons, almost all of which certainly involve the arrival of John Bolton. The worst Bolton.
is there a Michael Bull? Is
Yeah. The bad musician.
that- Okay.
I thought we were going to be talking about the Lord of the Dreadfort for a moment. Game of Thrones.
Oh, another year. Gotta wait another year.
No, I said the worst Bolton.
Right, sir.
It's always distressing seeing Trump, you know, put in another person in any kind of position, because sometimes he'll hire someone and you go, oh, somebody confident snuck through the cracks here. Maybe this will be the person who finally convinces Trump through, I don't know, lying, bribery, whatever, to get him to do the right thing. And then sometimes it's John Bolton. And you're like, well, let's just
You're right. Say what you will about what he had prior to that, but they were not neocons, and you could probably count on them not to want to go to war.
Or at least about half of them weren't.
I feel like Trump just hired his mustache. I don't think he actually knows anything about
Trump
the
didn't
guy.
like the mustache, according to the Fire and Fury book.
Yeah, supposedly Trump really doesn't like
Really?
the mustache.
Really? He got over the mustache for the nuclear...
I mean, I'm not sure what John Bolton's selling points were, if not the mustache, but
I assumed it was the nuclear accelerationism.
You
Yeah, it
learn to
does seem
stop
likely.
worrying and learn to love the mustache.
ain't nobody loves that mustache.
Very good.
Least of all,
6 points.
John Bolton.
Well, anyway, can we please talk about Paul Ryan not running for re-election?
yeah.
Because like
What?
I mean, we've been hearing this
Paul
for
Ryan isn't running for re-election.
Yeah, we've been hearing the rumors for months that he was going to not, but then like he kept saying, no, that's just a rumor. I'm totally running. And then he'd have his spokesman come out and be like, no, that's just a rumor. He's still planning to run. And then suddenly this week, we got those rumors for like the 4th time. And then he was like, yeah, no, I'm out.
Yeah, no, that's like in politics, that's like the ship has sunk.
Oh, yeah. And
That's-
he's even using the most prototypical politician excuse ever. He is returning home to spend time with his family because if he stays in office any longer, his kids will only ever have known him as a weekend dad.
He needs to spend more time dumping mac and cheese on his family.
Look, I'm just going to say this. I'll just get those out there. I am sure that his kids have every reason to be grateful for the fact they don't better know their father.
Wow.
Damn.
I
son.
mean, even in so it's interesting. Like in terms of political strategy, even when a government is well liked, you will see certain prominent officials resign and take a
course.
break from politics because they want to have a shot at getting the big seat at some point themselves, and you need a little. There's always these cycles in politics where if you have a really big personality at the head of a party, there has to be a placeholder for a time before you can have another big personality. So it's natural to see people like that.
Also, people that are looking at running a campaign like that, like someone's representative thinking of running for governor or something, is going to be assembling a campaign team. They're going to want to focus on getting all the groundwork laid. So they're going to want to be out of office for a little while so they can focus on their future plans.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So like in Ontario, in Canada, we have a provincial election happening right now where we have the Canadian Donald Trump running.
Now,
as-
provincial election is like a state election.
Correct.
For people who aren't, filthy
Yes,
Canadians.
right? For people who are a bit provincial in their knowledge. Ooh. So Rob Ford's wonderful big brother, has been running a wonderful campaign where he has, for example, he's been running on a solid plank of defunding the CBC. Interestingly enough, the CBC is funded at the federal level, and Doug Ford would have no control over the CBC, and that's how dumb he is.
Now,
Talking
Ron
about
Ford-
the Canadian Broadcasting
Yes,
Corporation.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's
And
like
Ron Ford
RPGs.
is the
Cokehead
mayor
mayor.
who
Or former mayor
was
now.
Crackhead.
Crackhead.
Yes. Yeah.
The-
Is he
the
still alive,
infamously
or
one.
did he overdose on something bad?
No, it was cancer. It was cancer.
Okay.
It was- you know, he like Rob Ford had a
How
hard life of addiction.
anticlimactic.
Like as much as I have always loved to make fun of the Fords, there is a large element of tragedy in the death of Rob Ford. He really, had he gotten the help that he needed years earlier, you know, he would not have been a joke.
It seemed like he had a lot of opportunities to get that help.
He did, but you know, addiction is what it is, right? And sometimes the well, not sometimes, always the most important ingredient in it is a willingness to accept help.
Yeah.
But we were talking about resignations. So Doug Ford is running against the liberal Kathleen Wynne, and she has seen 10 or 11 of her representative, you know, it would be legislature representatives who are heavy hitters, not reoffer, against Doug Ford. So putting that in perspective, that shows you how unpopular Kathleen Wynne is.
Yeah.
Right. So when you see mass defections, when you see mass resignations, it's not that the ship is sinking. It has sunk.
And I mean, when it's scum like Paul Ryan that are fleeing the ship, it is way beyond.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to just because this is hilarious, the fact that Paul Ryan is dropped out of that race means that now the leading Republican
It's a Nazi. It's a goddamn
the
Nazi.
Second Nazi to be holding the presumptive position of Republican nominee for a congressional seat in the United States in 2018. And this isn't just any Nazi. We're talking about someone that's so awful that Breitbart decided too openly racist.
Yeah, there's a barometer for
Yeah,
extremism.
if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I don't know what possibly could.
I feel like I've permanently contorted my face in reaction to that.
Yeah, I was at a political event the other night, and there were a bunch of very nice, well-off older ladies there. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a single issue voter. My single issue is Nazis. And they're like, yeah, I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we got here. I don't know. There's a rumor that the Republican Party has decided that this whole blue wave thing is definitely happening and there's nothing they can do about it. So they might as well take out all the people that they actually like and just let the Democrats do whatever they want for a little bit. And then their base will be super pissed off.
We had a blog post by Eric Erickson, of all people, yesterday. Longtime Republican activist, was big grassroots in the mid-2000s and up till about the Tea Party time era. And of course, he's very well connected. And he was relating a story of a conversation he had with, he didn't identify, but a sitting Republican member of Congress that is one of the ones that actively defends Donald Trump, and just in private going off outright. They were like this motherfucker, I don't know what the fuck he thinks he's doing.
Oh, man.
Wow.
They were talking about how they everyone they're like, oh yeah, I go on TV and defend him, but you know what, we all know that's a bunch of shit. Everyone hates his guts. We know that he is going to lose us the House, the fucking Senate, a bunch of the states. We're thinking about just impeaching him ourselves to put Mike Pence in.
Yeah,
Oh no,
Because that's who the Republicans want.
not the horse lover.
Yeah.
Ugh.
no more horse strokes from Tony tonight.
We don't need any of that.
No. But what that gets me thinking about is something that I have long been raising flags about behind the scenes in politics, which is this concept of loyalty and party loyalty.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Right. And what I have long been saying is that loyalty is not a binary thing. It's a spectrum. You can have a little bit too much of it, or you can have a little bit too little of it. And when you've got too much loyalty, air quotes, going on, groupthink sets in, and nobody is telling the boss what he or she needs to hear. And there's also this false attachment of that loyalty to the leader is loyalty to the party. Well, I'm sorry. If you're a Republican and you're loyal to your party, you need to start speaking out and saying this guy's a maniac, or your party is never going to get elected again.
Also, I mean, I have this fundamental objection to the idea that we should be loyal to the party. If the party
completely
represents
agree.
ideas that we're loyal to, by all means, support the party. But the idea that the party in and of it, on its own, somehow merits any kind of loyalty, blows my mind. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Seriously.
I completely agree. And that's, that's the reason why I'm a Canadian Liberal, is that at least the Liberal Party of Canada has this notion of being a big tent party where all ideas are welcome, and we, in theory, make decisions based on the data. Which means that loyalty therefore involves debate and opposing opinions and.
Right, but does your Big Tent include Nazis?
Not to my knowledge. That's not what Big Tent is supposed to mean.
Yeah,
Look,
well,
there's Big Tent, and
you're
then
in
there's
America
three
now.
ring circus, and I think I know which one.
So great.
I'm sorry, I am having trouble focusing because you may have guessed from all of the absences, the recent weather has really got everybody at the office sick.
Yeah.
I think we're on, what is this, third winter or fourth winter now?
At least fourth at this point, I think.
I think part of the show is just convincing you all never to move to Boston because we're always complaining
I'm
about
already
the weather.
regretting coming to visit.
Stock up on cold pills, everybody.
Vitamin D and your folic acid.
And jars of honey.
Oh, hey, honey's good.
No, I love honey.
Yeah, honey's.
I collect honey. I stockpile it.
Did you know that in studies, honey is equally as effective as cough syrup if you have a sore throat or cough?
So just take that shit straight, huh?
That's right. And if you can get the unpasteurized stuff,
I would have figured you would be here evangelizing for maple syrup.
Oh, well,
Seeing as you have a
later.
strategic maple syrup reserve.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I'm pretty sure I heard a few years back about people who were skimming off the top of that.
Yeah.
And
No joke.
And
The biggest political scandal in Canadian history.
It's I wouldn't go that far, but it's probably close.
they called out this big investigatory units for that, didn't they?
Yeah, well, and of course, let's not talk about Elbowgate. Have you guys ever heard about Elbowgate?
Look, the only thing I know about Canada is you don't mess with Canada because they come down and burn your White House.
Well, that was the British,
Oh,
but
baby.
but we sometimes we're feeling egotistical.
Also, you guys blew up your harbor. I know that story.
Oh yes, the Halifax explosion. Yeah,
Yes, and then we sent our doctors and nurses, and in return, you sent us a Christmas tree. Every year.
Halifax sends a Christmas tree every year. That's
It's all very generous.
yeah.
Ugh.
And we're thankful. We don't have to go pick it ourselves.
Elbowgate.
Let's do this.
Let's just do a little perspective
Story
on
time.
the controversies of the last couple of years in Canada versus the ones you're having.
Because this show wasn't depressing enough already.
So we had this great. If you go on YouTube, type in Elbowgate raw footage, you'll have a great time. So everybody's on the floor of Parliament. They're calling to a vote, and when the vote is being called in Parliament, there's a bell that goes off like in high school to let everybody know to get back to their seats. And the bell is going off, and the New Democratic Party, which is the far left party in Canada, is trying to block this vote. So what they're literally doing is standing in the aisles, preventing Conservative members from getting to their benches so that the vote can take place. And Prime Minister Trudeau got a little upset. And let's not forget, the man was a teacher. So he really likes decorum in the classroom, right? And he's seeing this go on, and he's seeing a Conservative member struggling to get beyond the New Democrat members. So he gets up and strides across the floor and grabs the Conservative guy by the elbow and hauls him through the crowd of people. And when he does this, I can't remember, Ellen Brasseau, who's actually very nice and intelligent, but totally pulled an Italian soccer player move when Trudeau reached in and was just like, oh my God! And which resulted in eventually this wonderful confrontation with Tom Mulcair, the leader of the NDP, like bellowing across the chamber at Trudeau. You elbowed a woman. You're pathetic. You're pathetic. And
Ooh, the Canadian red card.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's them's fighting words. And the thing you got to know is that Mulcair and Trudeau have real beef that goes all the way back to them being kids in Montreal. like they really did not like each other at all. Mulcair was this like beefer back in the day, and there's rumors that they may have had an altercation at one point, but we don't really know, and it's not talked about in the press.
Yeah,
Schoolyard fighting.
I just
God.
Googled this as you were talking, and this is seriously the Canadian Parliament, and they've got like arrows and circles around people, like it's a replay from what? Why?
Yeah. Now, and I also want to point out, I'm going to take the opportunity here to cross the aisle and talk about my admiration for Ruth Ellen Brasseau. She won her seat when they called it the Orange Wave. A couple election cycles ago, the NDP took a surprise win across Quebec. And she won, never expecting to win. The NDP just needed a name for her seat, right? This is rural Quebec. They did not expect her to win. She spent very little time in the riding and in fact was on vacation in Las Vegas during the election and then gets the call that she won, right? And the response was incredibly sexist. She was derided as a bimbo, she's blonde, she's attractive, so therefore she must be dumb, and she didn't campaign, so she must be lazy. But it's just, if you know anything about politics, they just needed a name. They just needed a name. And what she did was she came out speaking flawless French, despite being a native English speaker, and has become a real force in Parliament. So I'm really disappointed in her for pulling the Italian soccer player move. But anyway, I just had to get that out. Sometimes cross-party positivity is good.
Right. I
Must be nice to have a party where that's that's a realistic thing to aspire to.
It's not bad. That said, nobody hates each other like the NDP and the Liberals in Canada.
Oh, yeah,
they really
absolutely.
don't get along.
What's that? Groups on the left don't get along?
Yeah, not at all.
You guys can't get
group on
things...
the
You
left
don't
and
say.
a group that's
It's hard to get things done because leftists are always infighting?
Yeah, but don't forget to them, we're not leftists. We're these dirty centrists.
well, I mean, you really are.
That is literally how
all
every
perspective.
leftist firing squad works. You know that.
yeah, it's true. But I mean, for as far as you guys are concerned, the Liberal Party is about as radical left as you can get.
Oh, yeah. No, I got called a centrist for going to a what was it? Chamber of Commerce event.
I mean, the Chamber of Commerce is scum.
They
Literal
are.
scum.
I literally went there so I could nag the governor, or not the, so I could nag the mayor about the lead pipe situation.
Yeah, and that's entirely fair. I'm just saying. It is a fair point that the Chamber of Commerce is scum. It is what they exist for.
They are. So there's a whole bunch of notes in front of me. Mac did a fantastic job doing all this research, and I'm butchering it because I'm exhausted. Anyway.
I think you should have a NyQuil margarita there, Anna.
It might be time for that. Do you guys want to talk about Scott Pruitt and what a piece of shit he is? Because we've got seriously a page and a half of Scott Pruitt
is the administrator of the EPA currently. Prior to that, he was the Attorney General of Oklahoma, who was notorious for repeatedly suing the EPA for trying to enforce pollution laws.
Oh, okay.
Which
all right.
tells you why he got the nomination in the first place.
Oh, my dear
and
Lord.
sadly, probably also tells you why he got confirmed by the Senate. But
Wolves
he
in
is,
charge of the henhouse.
he is currently quite possibly the most scandal-ridden member of this administration, and I think we all know what high bar that is at this point.
Is that even a distinction that's possible?
Okay, so let's just go through his currently known scandals, okay?
Oh, God.
And several of these have like new details just from this week, but a bunch of these aren't actually super new.
A whole page of this.
Yeah. So first of all, there's the fact that two of his close aides that he brought into the EPA, he requested, or the EPA had requested large pay raises for these two aides, and the White House turned them down. So he took advantage of provisions of the Safe Drinking Water Act to give them raises of respectively $28,130 per year and $56,765 per year. And then went on Fox News, claimed that he didn't know anything about these raises until the day before the interview, had his chief of staff make a public statement about how he didn't know anything about it. But then there's internal emails that suggest otherwise, and a bunch of EPA officials have told reporters and congressmen people that they had information that expressly contradicts his claim that he didn't know. So, yeah, he abused the law to give huge raises to his close aides and then lied to the public about it. and possibly lied to Congress about it.
Lord Thunder and Jesus.
Then there's the part where, for some reason, he has a 24-hour security detail with 20 members, which is 3 times the size of the part-time security detail that his predecessor had, has already cost taxpayers about $3 million. And the entire basis for why they justified this was about how there were all these credible direct threats to him and he couldn't travel and coach because people would attack him and all this. And so, he got this huge security team, but it turns out that on February 14th, Mario Carabello, the former deputy associate director of the EPA's Office of Homeland Security, signed off on a report that the EPA intelligence hadn't identified any specific credible direct threat to the EPA administrator. I say former because Mario Carabello has now been fired.
That's not retaliation.
No. Then there's the fact that the inspector general is currently investigating whether the security team is overbilling and how they recorded their hours. There's the fact that Scott Pruitt is under investigation by the EPA's inspector general over the frequency, costs, and extent of his travel, as he's accrued nearly $200,000 of travel to date, largely due to his insistence on flying first class and taking charter flights all the time because, he can't fly with the people in coach, obviously. There's the part where just weeks after he took the job, he had to be told by his security detail that they weren't allowed to use the police lights and sirens to get him through the DC traffic jams for his convenience. Oh, and then the guy that told him that, Special Agent Eric Weiss, who had been the head of his security detail, got reassigned to the security to a different detail shortly thereafter.
And this is like bullet point 5 of 16.
So
like, what are we doing here?
We haven't mentioned the $43,000 soundproof phone booth he had built in his office. The allegations that he violated anti-propaganda laws by appearing in a National Cattlemen's Beef Association thing, asking ranchers to weigh in against an expansion of the Clean Water Act.
I need to go back to the Get Smart sound booth thing.
Right?
Like literally,
I assume it's just the cone of silence. I assume.
Oh my God!
I hope. If it wasn't, things were done wrong. And why did they spend $43,000?
Did he have a shoe phone made or something too?
I
assume
feel like the shoe
that's
phone would be
mentioning
cheaper.
next week. That can come out in a couple episodes, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Jesus Christ!
I really do hope that Scott Pruitt is around after the blue wave because they are going to come down on him like the fist of an angry god.
Yeah. If the allegations that he violated an anti-propaganda law that time with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association thing wasn't enough, he also has been accused of violating anti-lobbying laws by going to a meeting for the National Mining Association where he encouraged them to press on Trump to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accords. Just a reminder here, this is the administrator of the EPA.
Are you okay?
I need a drink.
I think we all need a drink at this point.
A scotch, actually, please.
So then there were the fact that the EPA declined to renew dozens of science advisors' terms and then replaced them with people with tons of conflicts of interest, like they came literally straight from the industry. And then if all of those weren't enough, like the one that's been really big in the news this week and kind of the last couple of weeks is that we found out that Pruitt spent the first 6 months after his appointment as administrator of the EPA living in a condo less than a block from the Capitol that belonged to a high-profile energy lobbyist who had previously contributed to Pruitt's political campaigns, and that Scott Pruitt, again, in a condo a block from the Capitol, was paying $50 a night and was only paying that on nights where he stayed there.
You had some roommates in there too.
So you guys have a bunch of gangsters running your country. How does that feel?
I mean, familiar.
Not great.
Familiar.
Yeah.
And I got to say, like,
demoralizing.
I've met a couple gangsters in my life, and they were always actually really respectful. And the thing is that respect is the big thing in that world, right? We all know about Trump's ties, construction, like back in the day and all that sort of thing. That's my big theory about the Trump whisperers and all this sort of thing, why he likes Putin so much. He went to Russia and was treated with respect as he felt he should as a boss.
Oh
Right?
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
He is all about loyalty, and
And-
he's made that very clear in all of his
And it's
statements.
always a one
And it's
direction
about,
street.
and it's about respect. It's about and whether it's earned or not. It's about the fact that he has power, therefore is entitled to respect.
Yes.
Right? Doesn't matter if he's smart, if he's got a good track record, any of this stuff.
It doesn't matter if someone like Scott Pruitt is going to ruin this country for as long as he's given that office. The thing about having Scott Pruitt in charge of the EPA, yes, all these scandals are bad. You know, I live in a small state. What happens in neighboring states is gonna affect us. You know, I grew up out in the Pioneer Valley in Western Massachusetts, and one of the things that you know if you grow up in a valley is your air is coming from somewhere else and just sort of settling where you are. So we end up with the pollution that comes in from other states. You know, a small state like Massachusetts can pass all the clean air and clean water laws we want, and maybe we can clean up the harbor, but it's not going to make sure that we have clean air and clean water for our kids throughout the state. It's not going to work unless it's happening at the national and at the international level. And Scott Pruitt is a piece of shit who wants to completely dismantle everything and is very clear on that subject.
Actively, like maliciously hostile towards his own agency.
You know,
I'm speechless.
all these scandals, you know, they keep things in the news, they keep your attention, they keep you up at night, but the actual problem is that while these assholes are busy getting their bribes, living it up, they're actively destroying everything that this country needs to thrive. You know, we need a working EPA so that we can have clean air and water. If you don't believe me, please just Google any of the pictures of the U.S. in the 1970s, any U.S. city in the 1970s.
Or, you know, the Cuyahoga River fire. Or
Just go watch, what was it?
Yep.
Oh, what's the movie? It's Silver something.
Body of water caught fire.
Gene Wilder.
This is in Ohio, by the way.
Oh, why am I not remembering it?
Yeah. But
Anyway, like you
actually,
can literally watch movies that were filmed in the 1970s and you can just see, oh, they were just filming LA and there's what LA looked like. Here's
well,
what
no,
Chicago
it wasn't.
looked
It
like.
was the brown cloud that if you could see through it would be what LA looked like.
You know, if you think what's going on with the pollution in China right now is scary, that used to be the US.
That was just every day.
We pushed through all of these laws. We made the EPA so that we could have a nice country to live in, so we could give our kids a chance to not grow up with all the asthma. You know, it's insane to me, not only that all these people are getting away with
Murder.
this ridiculous, super illegal nonsense, but that they're so transparently just doing it for their own benefit while they're actively taking away from the people who they're supposed to be serving. And yeah, there's lots of people out there resisting right now, but you know, we're over a year into the Trump administration. It's
only been a
real and it's
year?
happening.
He'll get his, Anna.
Yeah, well,
He will.
I don't know what his would look like. I genuinely don't. I don't know what an appropriate karmic retribution is for
Well-
what this administration is doing. I just don't.
I'm having a brain overload. I may need a moment. I just
Well, just think about what happened to that guy in that church in Kansas, Fred Phelps, who, before he died, got excommunicated by his own family. His own family that was the church. They kicked him out. And a man who just spent his whole life spreading hatred towards strangers, towards his own family, died alone and abandoned. And it's a terrible thing for one to say, but it seems like karmic justice for a lifetime of of terrible deeds.
Yeah, I think you're right. But you know what you got me thinking while you were talking about there's this whole thing about his daughter is that ensuring that Ivana has a shot at the presidency in 10 or 20 years is a big part of what he's trying to pull off here. That's probably the only thing that will provoke him to resign, and it's probably also would be the main catalyst for the breakup of his family if he actually tanks her chances.
You
which, of
believe
course,
that Ivanka
if-
wants to run for president?
Oh, absolutely.
I wouldn't
She's being
doubt
groomed
that,
for it. She's being
but-
groomed for it. Absolutely.
I don't think she'd make a good president.
I'm not
no.
making any comment there. I'm just saying that from what I've seen in the years, you can tell when someone is being groomed for leadership. And the most common aspect of being groomed for leadership in politics is being bounced around and being filled in on as many things as possible. And that's what you're seeing happen with Ivana.
That being said, I don't think Trump actually has the loyalty to resign for someone else.
No, he doesn't.
I
And
just don't see that happening.
I was thinking about that gangster comparison a second ago, and the thing is that he doesn't even get that right.
No.
I started thinking about that encounter that I had. It was more than 10 years ago. I was backpacking in Central America, and I was eating in a restaurant, and a local boss came in. And I'm just like, I'm this young kid, right? And someone goes, that guy like runs the town. And he was quiet. He was well dressed. He was respectful. He went around, shook a couple of hands, bought a couple of rounds of drinks for people, and then sat down and ate his meal in peace and left. And that's like in terms of underworld culture, as I understand it, like that's what respect is,
Yeah.
right? Trump is more like a dumb, rich, spoiled white kid's version of a gangster,
Yeah.
right? And he's
Which is
president
pretty
of the
much
United States.
literally what he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he has ties to organized crime from his childhood.
Yeah, of course.
So like, it's not like, there is that exposure from the young age, but he's obviously the privileged kid that didn't really get it.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling like it's probably time for us to wrap up. There's a lot more that we could talk about. Syria continues to be a giant mess. People are dying for no good reason. Mike Pompeo is a piece of trash. Like
Ryan Zinke is too. Oh, there was more with Manafort.
is doing all,
So
but
screwed.
I'm
So
actually
screwed.
On the other hand, there is good news out of Oregon, where they just became
okay.
the
Get
second
the one
state.
bit of good news in.
All right, Oregon has just become the second state to pass net neutrality protections into state law, and this was on Monday, and it's a law based around using government contracts to incentivize net neutrality, rather than the Washington Post of mandating net neutrality.
Washington being the first state to have passed protections.
Indeed, and now locally, we here in Massachusetts are working to implement our own net
Yeah, we
neutrality
have a couple
proposals.
different things along those lines. There's a special Senate committee looking into it and a bill currently in the legislature under consideration.
What's great about that is once you have a couple states doing it, then all of the service providers, well, they can't very well chop up their stuff based on where the wires are. So they're just going to have to give up. But the thing I wanted to pop back to, it's actually an XKCD comic that came out where they're quoting from an editorial from a paper in 1881 talking about how what's going on now is going to enter into the permanent history of our country, and how future generations are going to look back on this and know these dates. And, there's no chance that they're actually going to understand everything that we're going through, but this is going to be in the history books. And they're talking about the death of Garfield,
Ah, yes.
but it was so spot on for the way a lot of us feel today. And it was,
Well, I mean, if you want the one that's the thing that you want for all the parallels today, just go back and read all the newspapers from the Watergate scandal, because literally all there's what was it, the Art Buchwald, I think, did a column that was like, the excuses for the Nixon administration. It was like 40 points or something that they could use to like distract. And then like, if you just go through the list, every single one of them is a thing the Trump administration has or like Republicans have cited, up to and including things like, what about Chappaquiddick?
Yep.
Which you may have heard in the news this week, because it's back in the news now.
They're playing their greatest hits.
there's another Kennedy running for something, or bust out Chappaquiddick.
Look, there's no higher profile Democrats to attack. Go after the classics. It's what they have the material written for.
Yep. But it
Because
was
they
just
have no originality to come up with anything new.
But it was just in some ways comforting knowing that, yeah, this is really bad what we're going through now. It's real, but we've been in bad places before. Other people have been here. We've survived. You know, keep moving. Hopefully we get through this next batch, and hopefully there's some light on the other side of this one, because this is
Keep your head up, Anna.
hell of a year, guys. Anyway, next week, real Gregg will be back. Our lovely Kayla should be back in her seat, so we can have a little more levity and a little more yelling. Thank you all for staying with us this week. I'm supposed to plug the Patreon, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
there's all those credits at the end, so listen to those.
Listen to those and, give us money so we can keep having this studio, you guys. It's important. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you very much and good night. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in. The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Eric Gowrays, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie LoCicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action.